Welcome back. This is the Scaling Secrets podcast, and David Raymond is here from PremiumServiceBrands.com. David has worked in the home services sector since 2002, where he started as a technician in a family-owned startup garage door business, but he has spent the last 6 years in franchising as an operations coach and senior operations executive. And we're talking today about Premium Service Brands, which is a multi-brand franchise platform specializing in home service franchises. And so David is going to be speaking with us today about what that means and what he's created and what he's done along the way. So David, glad to be speaking with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Robert. Happy to be on. Super excited to get the opportunity to do things like this. I can tell you it's the ultimate validation that you're doing some things right when people reach out and want to hear about your story and what you've done to get where you are. So, incredibly flattered to be on and just excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and you're so right. It means that you've made it, right? People want to know about the story, and there's still a lot more that you have to accomplish in life, but even just so that people can learn what you've done so far, and depending on their levels of awareness, they might be someone that wants to plug into what you've created and get one of these franchises, or maybe there's someone who even outside of your industry, and they just want to peek over and see what someone else is doing and get their own sort of entrepreneurial tips. So as far as this Premium Service Brands kind of company that you have, can you tell us about it? What's it all about? What makes it stand out?
Sure. It's a multi-brand franchise platform. And you'll hear that term quite a bit in our industry. It just simply means we have more than one franchise concept that we are currently offering. Premium Service Brands started in 2007 with our founder, Paul Flick. He founded a painting company, unfortunately, right into the teeth of the housing crisis. So not a great time. It taught him a lot about resiliency and overcoming those challenges. But it also taught him that in order to succeed in any business, you really need to have a diverse platform. You need to be able to have multiple lines of revenue and really be able to maximize the efficiencies that come with that. And so he embarked on the plan to build a multi-brand franchise around the home service industry, really with the idea that you would be able to leverage a single client acquisition across multiple brands. So as you brought in a customer for, say, your painting platform, you could then target that customer for garage doors or housekeeping or some other home service activity, and that would reduce the acquisition costs and obviously make client acquisition much more affordable for your customers, for your franchisees. The other thing that Paul tapped into pretty early was there were operational synergies across these revenue lines. So once you learn how to run a home service business, it's really not that hard to add another home service business. The way I like to describe it is it's like learning an instrument. That first musical instrument you try to learn is really hard because you're having to learn music and music theory, and then you have to learn the instrument. But once you understand all that and you take on another instrument, well, now you don't really have to learn about music and music theory and how all of that language works. Now all you have to do is learn what's different about this little instrument that you're picking up versus the one that you learned to play initially. And business is very similar. So once you kind of get a sense of how a home service business works and you've built the operational infrastructure and you have the staffing and the really competent people around you and strong, robust systems, adding tile restoration to that is like, okay, well, I just got to learn how this instrument's played versus the one that I'm currently playing. So, and Paul tapped into that pretty early in a way that I think other multi-brand platforms didn't really recognize as an opportunity. They obviously understood the client acquisition side, but really the operational synergies that come from these businesses. So if you look out and you see other home service platforms, their brands tend to operate very distinct silos. Each brand has its own internal support team, its own internal leadership team, its own internal marketing and sales resources. And here at Premium Service Brands, our brands exist inside a single ecosystem. So the software you use in 360 Painting is the same software you're going to use in Made Right. The marketing department that you get your collateral from for 360 is the same marketing team that's building the Made Right collateral. Even our contact center answers for all 9 brands. So we are able to gain tremendous operational efficiencies across all 9 brands that might not be easy to recognize if you have disparate systems and competing software ecosystems. So, Paul really, from the beginning, that was his fundamental vision. My role at Premium Service Brands, at least since 2018, has been to manifest that vision in reality. Go ahead and find out what are those software ecosystems we're going to bring on? How are the operational processes going to be harmonized across all the brands? And that's been kind of my story since joining at Premium Service Brands. In 2018, we
Well,
only had 3 brands. Now we have 9.
well, wonderful. And so, just to make sure that we understand all these brands that you have, I saw on your website that there's like the painting and the plumber, and there's the housekeeping and the junk removal. To help us kind of get an idea of what these kind of silos are, like what are the various brands that make this up?
So we have 360 painting, Made Right, House Doctors, ProLift Garage Doors. House Doctors is a handyman concept. We got ProLift Garage Doors, Kitchen Wise, Closet Wise, which is home organization. We've got Window Gang, which is residential commercial window cleaning. I always feel bad because I feel like that dad that's going to leave out one of his kids, but that's kind of the gamut. And the Grout Medic, which does tile and grout restoration. So, and then Ruderman is probably the oldest brand in our inventory. Ruderman was founded in the 1980s by Donald McDonald. It was one of our more recent acquisitions. And it's a very, very storied brand. But that's pretty much the makeup of brands that we have.
I love it. And so there's so many just cool. There's like 2 or 3 concepts in kind of the origin story that you mentioned a moment
Mm-hmm.
ago, and it's how there's number one. There's this idea of once you figure out the concepts, the fundamentals, and kind of the first kind of just like proof of concept, then when it comes time to apply all the operations and all the things you do right to the other brand, like you said, there's only just that learning of what's different about it. It's like playing
Right.
a musical instrument, or you make me think about like when I was like in 3rd grade, it took so long just to learn addition or multiplication. It took a whole year just to
Right.
learn it. And then when you get later on in like high school and later, and you build on top of that, it's a lot faster just because you have that base foundation. And so you figure out these things like marketing and SEO and CRM and customer follow up and all these things, and you just apply it to kind of the next industry. That's a really cool concept. And then the other thing I am kind of digesting from what you said is that, well, say you were just the painting company and you were getting all these customers, homeowners or their realtors, they have this need, and if you just stuck to just the painting, well, they have all these other kind of unmet needs, and then you have to go and acquire all these other customers, and you're kind of like a
Right.
one shot sort of person. And so it makes a lot of sense how you just use that lead for these other kind of possibilities, and which leads to kind of the maybe so far unspoken concept number 3. And I was thinking about this the other day while driving. Just it's so tempting for the ego to like start from scratch, right? To say like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to be a handyman and I'll be like a mom and pop and I'll figure all these things out. But then there's all these franchises and all these different areas out there, and like restaurants probably have the most like buzz as
Right.
far as a franchise you can plug into, but just all these franchises exist in all these businesses that maybe we wouldn't have thought of. So if someone out there is an aspiring entrepreneur, business owner, whatever, instead of having to figure out their own SOP and branding and marketing and software and all these things, they can just kind of plug in to
Mhm.
one of these franchises that you've created and just kind of like take it and apply it to the area.
Right, correct, exactly like that. And one of the greatest strengths of franchising that I think is unique to franchising is if you think about most business enterprises that have any kind of scale, they tend to adopt a very corporate mindset and have that pyramid, right, where the CEO and the leadership sit at the top and they rain smart decisions down on everybody and the whole organization benefits, right? When we know from living in that, it doesn't work that way. What franchising does is it actually inverts the pyramid. So every single one of our franchisees is an independent business owner who's invested their own money and their own dreams, their own heart, sweat, all that stuff into the business. And they're out there every day trying to battle in a market, right? They're trying to compete for market share and win jobs and feed their family. And so our role as franchisors is to make sure that our systems are robust and competitive and put them in the best possible position to be successful. So in order for an enterprise like this to work, you have to really tap into those people that are closest to the customer. And you have to understand what their challenges are. And then you have to sit down with a bunch of really bright people and go, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? And I think you get a very authentic experience in franchising when that happens. Because if the franchisor doesn't do that correctly, they don't exist. They won't last. If they're unresponsive to their owners, if they don't help their owners solve real business problems in the real world, their business owners will go out of business and their franchise will fail. So, and then the second part that's really awesome about franchising is you are in a family of franchisees. So when I came up in that small mom and pop garage door business and we went right into the teeth of the housing crisis, we didn't have another garage door company with the same logo, the same internal infrastructure, the same ecosystem, and be able to say, what are you guys doing to get through this, right? You could probably talk to the window guy across town or maybe talk to the roofer but his problems are a little bit different, right? Maybe roofs aren't being impacted the same way as garage doors are. But in a franchise, in ProLift alone, we have 55 other franchise owners. There's 55 business owners out there every day tackling problems, figuring things out, sharing best practices. And because it's your business, it's real. It's like, I know that solution, if it worked over there, it's probably going to work over here. So the real strength of franchising is in the actual individual franchisees and how they collaborate and cooperate. And a strong, smart franchisor knows to leverage that as much as possible.
I love it, and you're so right that you're not going in alone. You have the structure, you have the support in multiple ways. There's the kind of from the whole franchise because they want you to succeed, and then from your peers as well in a sort of a mastermind sort of way where if you were talking to other sort of like quasi competitors or people in some kind of adjacent industries, well, how helpful is that and how relatable is that? Well, you have to kind of adapt or adjust. But if you're talking to someone who's in the same franchise as you, and they're also the garage door repairman, but they're in some other jurisdiction location where you won't conflict with each other, then you can get these really hot current best practices and ideas and things that you maybe wouldn't have get otherwise. And so like, what does the story look like? Like, say someone wants to like jump in on like the garage door franchise. Sometimes you hear about things like with other franchises, like there's startup costs or there's time from joining into getting everything set up. So like if someone says, okay, I want to be a ProLift franchise, sort of what are the steps? What's the timeline?
Sure. So I'll use ProLift since you use that as an example. I actually personally own a ProLift here in Charlottesville. So I've gone through this process myself personally. For our purposes, we like to target about a 90-day term. So 90 days from when you sign your franchise agreement and fund your franchise agreement, we want to see that your business is open and operating and generating revenue within about 90 days. We've drawn a very, very, very strong correlation between the amount of time between signing and launching to success rate. And it's a lot to do with psychology and resources. The longer the business isn't producing revenue, the body at rest tends to stay at rest, right? You just got to get that thing moving and get it up and running. So we try to target about 90 days. Most of our openings are happening well sooner than that. We've had some as early as 35, 40 days from funding to open. Certain brands are a little different. We've got a couple of brands that have a vehicle requirement. So there's a little bit of logistics involved in ordering and wrapping the vehicle and getting stocked and set up and ready to run. But for some of our brands, like 360 Painting, you could pretty much turn that thing around in 4 weeks if you wanted to, and be through our training program. Our training is 3 weeks. It's a week of onboarding, which is basically getting you into every system, getting your business configuration set up, your LLC incorporated, your bank accounts, all the goofy things that people don't think about when they're starting a business. But I mean, there's a significant amount of work that goes into getting a business in a configuration to actually legally operate. The second week is business fundamentals. It's a virtual education program where we cover all of the terminology, vocabulary, fundamental principles, things that you're just going to need to know if you're going to be even able to open the doors. And then the final week is a live week here in Charlottesville where we run through practical exercises. We do business simulations, we do hiring simulations, and work through all of the nuts and bolts that you as a business owner are going to do in your first year or so in the business. We really don't focus on anything outside the first 6 months from a learning perspective for a couple of reasons. People don't retain knowledge like that. So teaching them something they need a year from now is pointless. And the other thing is the first 90 to 180 days are make or break. That's the most critical period of time in any new business. And so we want to make sure that we've got our owners prepped, ready, tons of velocity, lots of knowledge, lots of enthusiasm, and get them out there going as quickly as possible with as much momentum as possible to punch through that 90 days and 180 days. And then around the year mark, we'll start doing regional trainings. We'll invite them to some of our sessions that we do in various cities where we cover some of the more higher level topics.
Wonderful, and I like how all of that timeline is all wrapped in, as you said, like the kind of the psychology of the immediacy. Where if you
Right.
said, "Oh, we'll do this in 6 months, we'll do this in 18 months," that's almost a recipe for failure. And
Mm-hmm.
especially these days, but it's always been true, right? Where if someone just wants to get started now, why wait 6 months and why not jump on it today? And it seems like a lot of these things that you're mentioning, as far as the acquiring customers and hiring people and figuring out the bank accounts, I love how it's all done within the first few weeks or months, because
Right.
some of these things are things that maybe the business owner doesn't even get to hiring until a year or two or
Mm-hmm.
5 years down the line. So it seems like this really shortcuts the time and keeps someone from reinventing the wheel, right? If they had to figure out their own, oh, I need to wrap my car and figure out this logo and just figure out, like,
Yep.
it's all done, and you've shortcut maybe even potentially years for them. And so as far as kind of the payment structure, is there like a setup cost, a monthly fee, a percentage? How does that work as far as the payment of it?
Sure. So most of our brands are a percentage of revenue model. So it's a typical franchise. You pay a percentage to us on the revenue that you produce. We have one or two that are a flat fee, where you pay a fixed royalty every month to operate under the brand's logo. In either case, those funds typically go towards funding the franchise or operations. So that's where we invest heavily in our operations team and our marketing team and all of those things that make the franchise operate. But that's typically how it works. There's an initial fee in every franchise. You're essentially buying into the business model. So for that fee, that is what covers your training, your onboarding, all of the support you're going to get in the first 90 days when you're not producing revenue, because zero from zero is 6% of zero is zero, right? So we have to fund that, and a lot of that comes out of the initial franchise fee. In the trade businesses or the home service businesses, it's a typical low cost of entry. We're way on the low end of initial investments. So if you were to think of like a restaurant concept, which is what most people associate with franchising, you're probably looking at even if the fee isn't expensive, you're looking at a build out of about $500,000 to $750,000. You're going to sign a 10-year lease. You're going to have the hiring. Your staff has to work whether or not the business is doing any business. So it can be really expensive upfront to get into a restaurant concept. Whereas a home service concept, you really need a truck, a guy, some marketing. Most of our brands don't even require a fixed space. And if they do, we're talking like a shared office or a industrial storage type space where your rent's in the hundreds, not thousands. So it's an accessible business for people to get into, especially, our most common franchisee is post corporate. They reached kind of a point in their career where they started to see what retirement was going to look like, and they started to recognize that they probably didn't put enough away. Lifespans for humans has gone up tremendously. So you retire at 60. My dad's been retired since he was 60, and he's 87. So he's 27 years since he's had to earn a living. Now, my dad he worked in the New York State School District, so he's got a pension. But for those of us that have lived on 401ks, even if you got $750,000, a million, 1.5 tucked away in a 401k, if you're looking at trying to live for the next 20 years of your life, that's probably not going to be enough. So these are great vehicles for people that are looking to create, some extra income or maybe a lifestyle income, and or even income replacement. We have some refugees, they got let go from IBM and a downsize, and the prospect of hitting the job market was just terrifying. So they decided to bet on themselves for the first time in their lives. So, and that kind of makes up who our franchisees are.
I love that. Bet on yourself, control your own
Mhm.
destiny. And so that way you can kind of build and structure what you want, right? You say, I'll apply this kind of franchise, and maybe at first I'll do some of the work and hire my team. But then eventually you have this, you can make some of these decisions
Yep.
and kind of grow your business, and then have more flexibility as far as how much you want to be involved in the day to day versus the management and the big picture stuff, just depending on how you grow it. And we've been saying, if you try to start from scratch and do this yourself, there's so many headaches, so many ways to go wrong, such a long just time ahead of you.
Mhm.
And if you start when you're 50 or 60, it might be till you're 70 or later till you figure it out,
Yep.
as opposed to applying a proven system with the help that you need. And so speaking of your people getting help, like, is there maybe a common like pitfall? Is there a point in the maybe the onboarding or the growing franchise where it gets a little scary? Is there like a number one thing that your customers like should keep in mind just to keep this from going off the rails?
Yeah, I think that, well, there's always, it's watching everybody goes through this journey on their own, in their own way. And being a part of that is honestly one of the most rewarding parts of being in franchising. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of franchise executives, you in their moment with them. Like, we've got a training class going on right now. There's about 15 adults in our training space. And I think we've got 4 brands going through training right now. And so you're on their journey with them. These 15 people have never met each other before. They would have passed each other in an airport. They wouldn't have said 2 words to one another, right? And together now, those 15 individuals are now on a journey. They'll remember each other, what they went through, the training and launching their business. And, I'd love for all 15 to be successful. Statistically, probably 1 or 2 aren't going to make it, but they with them on that journey, and they're going to have these moments of panic. I use the term imposter syndrome. I've heard it on a podcast somewhere else where, you're in a position where you don't belong. Like, you feel like you're going to get found out. And, this is the first time they've ever been the person at the top, right? In the past, maybe they had an HR department that hired people. Well, now you're hiring, right? In the past, maybe you had a marketing department that told you this was your budget for next year. Well, no, now you get to decide. I mean, we're going to give you a recommendation. We're going to say what you should spend, but I can't tell you, like, you need to spend this. It's like, you're the owner of the business. You get to decide. And it gets kind of scary. And the closer they get to graduation, you can kind of feel both the enthusiasm because they're excited to get going, but also the fear starts to creep in. And so we make sure that our coaches and our brand leads and our support staff are right there with them to kind of say, hey, we did 105 of these last year. Trust me, everybody feels what you're feeling right now. We're just going to get you out there, get you busy. And really, that's the key. Whenever they get into those points where the fear starts to creep, that's when they got to be busy. You got to have stuff for them to do. You got to it's like anything. Like, the anticipation is worse than the reality, right? So don't stay too long in that anticipation. Like, decide what you're going to do and go, just punch and start doing stuff. And by the time you take a breath to realize, it's working, it's already worked. You already out hustled all your problems. You've already solved them in real time. And ultimately, that to me is, the number one thing that holds businesses back from growing in any way, scaling, just like your linear growth, it's fear. If I buy this extra truck, is it going to work out? If I hire this extra estimator, am I going to see a return on that? If I spend more money on marketing, will I be able to capture it? And the reality is, for almost any business owner that's made it past the first year, you've already solved some of the biggest problems you're ever going to encounter, right? So just make the decision and go. Just go. Just once you decide you want to run a bigger business, think about the very next step that you have to accomplish to get that done, and then just do it. Don't think about it. Don't fret about it. Don't sit on the weekends and talk to your spouse. You will eventually find people to talk you out of it, and you won't do it. And 2 years down the road, you'll think back to the time where you were thinking about adding 2 more trucks and you didn't, and some other competitor in your market captured that opportunity. So I think Patton said it: a good plan executed violently today is better than the perfect plan 2 weeks from now. It's really just about velocity, intensity, and activity. Just, when you decide you're going to do something, just don't wishy-washy, don't fret. If you make a bad choice, just be ready to change it, make a different one. If you do that fast enough and iterate it enough, more often than not, you'll come out on top. And that's the whole point of that's the game. That's what we're all trying to do.
I love it. That's very informative. You're saying be bold and be decisive and make the decision, and basically the entrepreneurial mindset. When you think about all these crazy innovators, right? You think about like Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. They all kind of do crazy stuff and sometimes make weird and stupid and wild decisions,
Yep.
but they move forward. And you think that the worst decision you can make is no decision, or in sitting around or letting the panic creep in. Or you're saying some of these scenarios like you just kind of talk around your support circle. And we've all done that. We've all seen that, where you kind of ask all these kind of like the more timid people within your network, and because you're almost looking for them to talk you out of it, right? You ask this person and you just shop around and then, oh, okay, well, this person and this person, and they all maybe voted in my head. I asked 5 out of 6 of my closest friends told me to calm down and slow down and not the risk. And so that's the solution. But it's not a democracy, it's a dictatorship. It's just you making the decision. And you're saying that we need to be maybe crazier to a certain extent, right? To follow those those kind of entrepreneurs and maybe less of the employees. And you're saying that the solution to panic and the anxiety and the doubt and the fear is to just take some action, to solve some problems, to get to work on the problem, because the problem will still be there. So you can either just get to it despite the fear, or you can kind of sit and let the fear build up and just put yourself through all this misery and then have to take action anyway. So why not just go ahead and do it right now? And so this is wonderful to think about. And already in my head, I'm thinking like, I wonder about the different kind of like path scenarios people take, right? Like you could have someone that they stick to one of these brands, or they build out multiple, or do they sell it or expand to different cities? And so to give us an idea of that, do you have a fun like case study, success story to share with us about like one of your franchisees who you think we can really learn from?
Yeah, I'm going to name drop too, because we have Mike Parrott is one of our franchise owners, and he initially came on as a 360 painting owner. I believe he's not even out of he might just, I'm going to get in trouble because I won't know exactly how long he's been. It's about a year, maybe a little over a year. And he has had just an incredible launch, an incredible rocket start. He's already working 2 brands. So he had his 360 painting brand. He's added a House Doctors brand. I won't give away the farm because we haven't worked out all the details, but he's reached out to add a 3rd brand. He is just, I mean, if you could clone him, you would. He's super enthusiastic, great personality, handles adversity really, really well. If he gets a setback, he's the kind of guy that, it's raining, he's got his umbrella, right? Car just drove by, splashed him with a puddle, and he's making jokes. He's laughing about it. Like, and you feel good standing next to him because, it's going to work out, no matter how bad it gets, as long as this dude's around, you're going to be okay. And I do think that mindset, we'd say lemons and lemonade or those terms, but like, when you lead an organization, everyone's going to look to you and how you handle adversity. If something unexpected happens in the business and you react to it in a poor way, you're teaching everybody around you. That's how to react to problems in our business. And, Mike's done a fantastic job creating that enthusiasm around problem solving and growing and dealing with the setbacks as they come. And he attracts people like that want to work for him. And so his organization is, I like to call it unconstrained. And it's really just his decision making. When does he want to take the next step? And he's got a team of people that are enthusiastic about what he's doing. They're enthusiastic to be a part of his journey. He's thrilled to be a part of their journey. And I'm sure they're going to run into some headwinds and, occasionally maybe take too big a bite of the apple, but, they'll figure it out and they'll get through it.
Amazing. Well, Mike is on a rocket ship, and it seems like the secret to his success is many things, but optimism. And I'm also getting from you that this whole ball game of business ownership, if you haven't done it, it's unlike anything you've ever done. It might be the hardest thing you've ever done, but it also will probably be the most rewarding thing you've done. And there's all these maybe elements that you haven't needed if you've been sleepwalking through life so far, right? Some of these ideas like leadership and making decisions and having people look up to you and being a people person and solving problems and being excited to jump in and enjoying those headwinds and the adversity. It's all this mix of things that that a lot of people just don't haven't experienced because they kind of go through this 9-to-5 life, but life is unpredictable. And if we want more options, then we can and should look into business ownership and looking into grabbing one of these franchises. So how does someone do that? If someone says, man, this whole idea of having the garage door or the painting franchise or any of these sounds delicious to them, how do they take the next step, and what's the website?
Premiumservicebrands.com. And on that site, you'll find a ton of information about all of our brands. You just fill out a simple contact form, and one of our team members will reach out. There is a bit of a process. Every franchisor out there is very cognizant of the quality of the individual who comes onto the franchise. It makes all the difference. So good franchisees run good franchises, right? So there is a vetting process. One of our team members will reach out, gather some information around you, kind of get a sense of what you're looking to accomplish in life and what are your goals of the franchise. And a lot of the early on, they may not know, do you want to build a legacy business or you're looking for lifestyle income? But we'll work through that with you and kind of help you figure out which of the brands is a good fit. And then as you move down that process, you'll have an opportunity to explore in brands in a lot more detail, meet the leadership in that brand, talk to owners that are a part of that brand. So the idea is to really just pull the curtain back and give you as much information as you can get and as we can legally provide so that you can make a really good decision. At some point in your journey, you'll be invited to come out here to Charlottesville for a 2-day discovery day event where we will introduce you to all of the leadership. You'll have an opportunity to talk to our employees here at corporate, be a series of presentations on kind of how we go about doing things at premium service brands. And then if everything checks your boxes and you feel like this is the journey you want to be on, you would elect to become a franchisee, we would award you a territory, and then we're off to the races.
Amazing. Well, I can tell that you thought this through and you've done this many times, and it's like a two-way process, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the aspect of this future owner, this future franchisee. They're curious, they want the information, but it also goes the other way as far as you talking to them about their goals and which of these franchises is the right fit. And this 2-day discovery visit sounds amazing as well, because this is kind of like a life-changing moment, and taking that leap can be scary for someone. And it's even scarier if they go it alone, and it can be really lonely. But if they have this group, this support system, these people that can say, hey, we've got the systems in place, we award you this territory, we've seen everything that can go wrong as far as at least the initial setup, and we have the kind of the emotional support and the ideas and the mastermind moving forward. I mean, it seems like the whole package. And so David Raymond from premiumservicebrands.com. And as we wind down our conversation, I want to make sure to put you on the spot for just a second, because it's always fun to ask someone about a quote or lesson that they think can really help. And it doesn't have to be like your favorite quote or lesson, but what jumps out at you when I ask for a quote lesson that perhaps a future franchisee or an aspiring entrepreneur would like to hear from you?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just don't quit. I can't coin it to anybody, but the most successful people in the world just don't quit. You just don't quit, no matter how bad it gets, no matter what you're going through, no matter what you're up against. Just don't quit. You just keep going and keep going. Sooner or later, either you'll break or the problem will break. But just don't quit.
I love it. Very short and simple. Can't get simpler than that. So
Operations,
don't
man.
quit. And while you're not quitting, go over to premiumservicebrands.com. We will see you there.
Thank you, Robert.
All right.